I'm sitting here looking at my soon-to-be ex-wife, Laura, and my asshole best friend. We've been married for 25 years. We've been friends with Robert for 23 years. My former best friend became the last shit as soon as he first started having my wife. Look, Steve, you don't need that gun. Bob said. Whatever it is, we can discuss it rationally. You have nothing to fear from me. Please take your finger off the trigger. My Glock 45 lay flat on the armrest of my chair, my finger resting on the trigger. I don't think it would be good for my health. After all, you're 60 pounds heavier than me and 6 inches taller. I've seen pictures at your house with your SEAL buddies. You could snap my neck in about 20 seconds. No, thanks. I think we should just sit here until Carol gets here. She dropped your youngest off at softball practice, and she'll be here soon. Listen, Steve, said my cheating whore wife, Laura. I don't know what you think is going on. I demand that you stop this right now or I will. Do what, Laura? I swung my gun. If you stand up, I'll shoot you in the kneecap, and if you stand up, Bob, I'll blow your privates off. Why don't we just sit here in silence? And while we're doing that, I bet if you two think hard enough, maybe you can find it in the back of your pea-sized brains, what this is all about. Now why don't we sit here and play a quiet game? The first one to tell all will stay in one piece, and I'll shoot the other one. Those two sat there stunned. I just stared at them as they started sweating and squirming back and forth on the couch. I started thinking back to the best days when Laura and I first met. To hell with that. Who cares about that? What matters now is one little comment from a few months ago that got me thinking. Carol and Bob were at a barbecue on Saturday afternoon when Laura walked up with a couple cold beers. She held them out to us and said, "For my husband." I spit the beer out of my nose when she said that. Bob just grinned. What was that all about? I asked. Steve, I have 3 husbands. Quickly coming to her senses, she giggled and said, I have a husband at work, a husband at the DMV, and a husband I really love. That's you, Steve. I laughed, and she kissed me, running her tongue down my throat. She'd never done that before. My stomach twisted in a knot. I started paying attention to the two of them and nothing. I mean, I didn't see anything out of the ordinary. I started checking security systems and records in the cloud. I pulled years of archived records stored in the archive. And nothing. Could they have done this years before we had security cameras? But she said husbands as if she meant the present. Over the next few months, I went through the phone logs and all the emails on her computer and phone from last year. Nothing. I knew they both worked in a government office that had security cameras everywhere. There was nothing they could do to avoid being caught. I checked the credit card receipts I had saved up over the years. Again, nothing. It seemed the only time they were together was in the car. They never left early or in separate cars to go to work. They only drove alone when one of them was sick or for family events or vacations. They were always home at the allotted time. The only time they were late getting home at night was when they were stuck in heavy traffic because of an accident, an hour 15 minutes give or take every day. They never traveled to conferences or seminars. I guess my gut was failing me. That was until 6 weeks ago when Bob walked in. And then my oldest son, Eric, they both left at the same time. That's when I noticed that they both had the same build in the back. I went online and ordered home DNA test kits for my children, Eric, Todd, and my youngest Anne. I asked them not to say anything to their mother. I wanted to surprise her for her birthday. Surprise, happy birthday, Laura. I called out. Carol tossed 3 plain vanilla envelopes onto the coffee table in front of them. What are these? Laura asked. Carol and I want you two to open them and read them, then I'll tell you. Oh, hell, I don't think they require an explanation. I snorted. They slowly reached out and opened each one. Laura went pale at the first sight of them. Robert threw up in the basket by the couch. She grabbed the other 2, read them and cried. I'm so sorry, Steve, I never meant to do that to you. I thought they were yours. I must have timed it wrong when I was fertile. Robert came to his senses and began to beg. She promised me that she would be safe. I would never make a cuckold out of my best friend. We weren't the best of friends. I bet you both enjoyed making Carol and I look like fools. I'm not gonna shoot you or try to get you fired from your job. We're gonna divorce you. If I fired you, Laura, I'd have to pay you alimony. I'd keep my pension and you'd keep yours. We'll split everything else in half. I took all our investments and put them in Anne's trust fund for her college. I canceled all joint credit accounts after I paid them off. I took half of the remaining money and put it in a separate bank account. We're putting the house on the market. All the fond memories I had of the place were nothing more than a facade. I've already rented an apartment across town as far away from you two as possible. I told the kids this morning that I wasn't their father, just a stupid man that you two used. I don't think they're very happy with you. Anne says she's going to move in with me when she graduates in 2 months. She doesn't wanna talk to you, Laura. I haven't said one disparaging word about you, so you're going to have to give her time. Please, Steve. Laura begged. I love you, I always have, and I always will. I just made a mistake in my cycle. I grinned and shook my head. Laura, I don't think you really believe the nonsense you're trying to slip me. There's an old saying in the Bronx. Shit has a sound all its own. I really love you. I wanna grow old with our grandchildren and watch them be born, she cried. Trying not to shoot her, I replied, Laura, there's one problem here. You and I are not going to have children for you to look at. As it turns out, I'll never have our grandchildren to look at. You'll be able to look at them with Bob. She cried again and said, I'm so sorry. I never meant to do this to you. I looked at Bob and tears were running down his cheeks. He tried to wipe them away before they fell into his lap. Carol came over and started to soothe them. Bob, I talked to all your former SEAL team members and told them how you betrayed your naval code of conduct. Not military law, but the code of relations between the Marines themselves. I told them how you screwed your best friend and betrayed him and me for the last 23 years. The email says you are persona non grata to them. I'm sure they will call you personally. As far as you and I are concerned, it's over between us. I don't have to do the housework now. I'll get alimony for the rest of my life or until I get married again. You know what? I'm never getting married again. I'll just bring men into my house and fuck them in the bed you pay for. I've already asked my lawyer to block our financial accounts. We're going to get an allowance until the divorce is finalized. I'm going to take everything we have. I'm sure my lawyer will crucify you both for what you two have done to us, and I'll make sure to play my part in front of the jury as the resentful wife who wasted 23 years of her life on you. The good news is I sent the DNA info to your parents, Bob. They're thrilled to have 3 more grandchildren, but Laura, I can't say the same for Steve's folks. They were absolutely heartbroken that they would never have grandchildren. Laura slid off the couch crying with despair. I waved my gun at Bob. Help her up, Bob, put her back on the couch. He picked her up and sat beside her holding her so she wouldn't slide back to the floor. A man came into the room and asked, Are you Mr. Robert Watkins? Yes. Bob answered. You have been served. He turned to Laura. Mrs. Laura Foster. She only shook her head. He placed the envelope in her lap and took a picture. You have been served. He turned and walked away. Bob, Carol said, in this package is a restraining order against you. You have 2 hours to pack your things and get out of the house. I'm not afraid of you per se, but I don't want to deal with you. I'll have it taken down so you can see the kids. I think you can move in with Laura. Laura, I want you to go away for the weekend. I'll finish packing and leave Sunday morning and you can come home. I told her. Heck. Just think about it. You could let Bob move in and you could share everything. Not just a ride to work. Laura burst into tears again. Okay, Bob. We give up. Bob looked confused by that statement. I continued to explain. Carol and I puzzled over how you two got away with it for so long. Well, At least until the day she called you one of her husbands. Since it doesn't matter anymore, tell us how you two have been tooting my horn all these years." Bob sighed and slowly shook his head and said, "In the car while we were driving back and forth to work, Carol and I looked at each other incredulously." "That's right," he said, "in the car, never anywhere else." "When did it start?" "About a year after we started driving together. One day, we were stuck in traffic. I was starting to get a tension headache. Laura saw the discomfort I was in, reached out and started rubbing my neck. My headache was slowly dissipating. That's when she offered me intimacy. We were tormented with guilt and swore we'd never do it again. But we did." "When did we start having sex?" "We couldn't do it because of the heavy traffic, so we drove in daylight. Then daylight saving time ended. It was dark in both directions. If traffic was smooth or started and stopped, we just touched each other with our fingers, and if there were accidents, we stopped in traffic. I always made sure that no one from the truck could see us doing it when she got on top of me. That's why our windows were tinted. We didn't need prying eyes." I looked at Laura. Laura, please look at me." She raised her puffy eyes. Laura squeaked, "I swear I didn't do it, Steve. I swear it was just sex. I love you with all my heart. I've never said no to you. I always made sure you had everything you could handle at least 4 or 5 times a week, if not more." Bob pleaded with Carol. "You just don't realize how hard it is at work and standing in traffic day after day." "Oh, you poor baby," Carol replied. "You needed to distress after a hard day at the office and fighting traffic. Do you remember the week I left to take care of my sick sister? You begged me to come home because you were going crazy, and that was only a week later." "Laura, what about poor Steve? He cooked dinner and made sure the house was in order and the kids had their homework done by the time you got home. You know, Steve? Maybe we should have had an affair, so we were under the pressure of always having to take care of everything by the time they got home." "Laura, I thought you were telling the truth about when it must have started." "I seem to get it every day in the summertime, and in the off-season, except for weekends, holidays. You used to shut me off during the week." "What changed?" "Now I remember before my youngest was born, I used to get sex once every 2 weeks. Laura wrinkled her nose. "I took the van he'd drive, and I'd saddle him up. Let me guess, about 9 months before each child was born, there was a major accident. You two were stuck in traffic for 8 hours. I'm guessing you were busy at the time." Both of you lowered your eyes in shame. Carol asked Bob. "You insisted on buying the van. Is that why you wanted it?" I turned to Laura. "You said you loved me and didn't deny me what I paid full price for by marrying you." "It's true, my dear," she replied. "I love you with all my heart." "And what about those evenings when you two slept together? You swore you never gave me his cream pies. Is that true?" "Yes." "Laura, you're wrong," I said. "You've turned me down over 1,000 nights in the many years you spent together in the car." She looked at me shocked as the gears in her head turned. Then she burst into tears again. "Well, Bob, I guess now you two will get up and leave. As for me, I never want to see you again. You and Carol have children, so I guess you two still have children to raise. I won't be attending any more family gatherings since you and Carol have children, and you and Laura have children together. That will make the party interesting without me." Bob looked at me and said, "Steve, I'm sorry I was the biological sperm donor, but you are their real father. Somehow that doesn't make me feel any better. Now you two leave. Laura, you can come back on Sunday. Carol helped me pack an overnight bag for you and your parents are waiting for you." I was sitting in my chair drinking my Jack and Coke when I felt soft hands rubbing my shoulders. "You have so much tension in your shoulders," she said, leaning over me and whispering in my ear. "I wanna take all this pressure off. How about a little revenge sex? I know you like my breasts, you stare at them all the time." Epilogue. Divorce has gone through. Bob moved in with Laura. It didn't last long. Curiously, they stopped carpooling. I continued to see Carol, my daughter, and traveled to the state capital and decided that since I had gotten money from Bob as child support, she could now afford to go to a better college. One night, Carol and I had dinner at my house. It was the weekend, the kids were at Bob's. I got a call from Ann, and as I hung up the phone, I felt like I was about to faint. Carol looked at me with concern and asked, "What's the matter, dear?" "All the kids, all 7 of them, just took an ancestry test. They wanna see how many of them each have the same DNA. I have to pack up and run. I figure I have a few weeks before Bob and Laura find out that your and his 4 children are actually mine. He'll hunt me down and tear me into a million pieces." Shit. Carol replied, "I'm coming with you." "Why?" "He won't hurt you. He's not the kind of man to hit a woman." "That's easy for you to say. You're not the one who fed him your cream pies for 23 years.